The Galactic Defense Council's war room buzzed with dismissive chittering as Admiral Zexthera reviewed the latest deployment reports. Her crystalline exoskeleton caught the harsh light as she gestured toward the holographic display showing troop positions across the contested Kepler system. "The humans are sending reinforcements," she announced to the assembled alien commanders, her voice carrying the musical quality of her Velkari species. 3,000 of their so-called veterans from something they call the Afghanistan conflict. Commander Rook, a massive Thraken whose scaled hide bore the scars of a dozen campaigns, let out a rumbling laugh. Afghanistan? That backwater desert on their primitive world? What could they possibly have learned, fighting with chemical propellants and metal projectiles? The other commanders joined in the mockery. The sleek Narathi delegate, General Silnex, tapped his elongated fingers against the table. "Our intelligence suggests these humans have been fighting each other for centuries over resources and ideology. Primitive tribalism at its finest. They lack the sophisticated neural link coordination of proper warrior species." Admiral Zexthera nodded, turning to study the tactical display. The Vorthan Empire had been pressing their assault on the outer colonies for 6 months, their biomechanical warriors proving nearly unstoppable. Each Vorthan soldier was 8 feet tall, genetically enhanced and equipped with personal energy shields that could deflect most standard Alliance weapons. "The Vorthans will crush them within hours," Rook continued, his massive arms crossed. "These humans barely survived their own planetary conflicts. How can they hope to stand against an empire that conquered 17 systems?" The human liaison, Colonel Sarah Chen, sat quietly at the far end of the table. Her weathered face remained impassive as she listened to the aliens dismiss her species. Only the slight tightening around her eyes betrayed her emotions. "Colonel Chen," Admiral Zexthera addressed her directly, "surely you understand the futility of this deployment. Your people would be better served in supply roles or planetary defense." Chen stood slowly, her movements precise and controlled. "With respect, Admiral, you've never fought humans who have nothing left to lose." The room fell silent. Chen activated her personal communicator. "This is Overwatch. Send them down." 3 days later, the first reports began filtering in from Kepler 7, and the tone in the war room had shifted dramatically. "Impossible," General Silnex whispered, staring at the tactical readouts. "The Vorthan 12th Battalion, completely eliminated. 300 enhanced warriors, destroyed by a force 1/10 their size." Admiral Zexthera's crystalline features darkened as she reviewed the battlefield recordings. The humans had done something unprecedented. They had abandoned every conventional military doctrine the Galactic Council recognized. The recordings showed chaos. Human soldiers, their faces painted with mud and ash, had emerged from positions that shouldn't have provided adequate cover. They moved through terrain the tactical computers marked as impassable, appearing behind Vorthan lines like vengeful spirits. "They're not fighting like soldiers," Rook muttered, his earlier confidence evaporated. "They're fighting like survivors," Colonel Chen finished quietly. "These men spent 20 years in mountains and deserts where every rock could hide an enemy, where every step could be your last. They learned to read the land to become part of it." The next report was even more disturbing. The human veterans had captured a Vorthan command post using nothing but improvised explosives and psychological warfare. They had somehow convinced the enemy that they were surrounded by a force 10 times larger, causing a full retreat. "How?" General Silnex demanded. "Their equipment is primitive." Chen pulled up a detailed analysis. Sergeant Martinez, formerly of the 10th Mountain Division, rigged their camp with noisemakers and heat sources. He made 50 men look like 500. Captain Williams, Delta Force veteran, infiltrated their communications and fed them false intelligence. "These aren't just soldiers. They're artists of warfare." The recordings continued to pour in. Humans adapting alien weapons in ways their creators never intended. Veterans who had learned to identify threats by the sound of displaced air, who could move through hostile territory guided by instincts honed across decades of asymmetric warfare. But it was the final engagement that truly shook the Galactic Council. The Vorthan Empire had deployed their elite guard, warriors who had never known defeat, equipped with the most advanced technology in their arsenal. They landed on Kepler 7 expecting to sweep away the remaining human resistance in hours. Instead, they found ghosts. The humans had vanished into the planet's cave systems, emerging only to strike with devastating precision. They used the Vorthan's own advanced technology against them, turning their strength into weakness. The elite warriors, trained for honorable combat between equals, found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to play by any recognizable rules. Within 72 hours, the Vorthan Guard had been systematically dismantled, not through superior firepower or technology, but through the accumulated wisdom of men who had learned warfare in the crucible of Earth's most unforgiving conflicts. The final transmission from the Vorthon commander was barely coherent. They are not soldiers. They are something else entirely. We cannot predict them. We cannot counter them. They fight as though death is merely an inconvenience. Admiral Zexthera stood in the silent war room, studying the reports that would reshape galactic military doctrine. The humans hadn't won through technological superiority or numerical advantage. They had won because they understood something their enemies did not, that true warriors were forged not in academies or training facilities, but in the desperate struggle for survival itself. Colonel Chen gathered her materials, preparing to leave. "Admiral," she said quietly, "you wanted to know what humans learned in Afghanistan? We learned that there's no terrain too hostile, no enemy too advanced, and no odds too impossible if you're willing to pay the price." As the human officer departed, the alien commanders sat in contemplative silence, finally understanding why Earth soldiers were no longer mocked, but feared across the galaxy. The veterans had arrived, and history would remember their names.